This video contains spoilers for Arcane Season 1 and 2. Don't you think that Act 1 of Season 2 had many strange things, probably due to excessive cuts? Well, I do, so let's talk about it. I will try to reconstruct some interesting elements and topics based on the barely observable traces they left in the show. It seems obvious to me that Season 2 has too much content for its duration, because there are many announced topics that then are not paid off, some main characters that are sidelined, and some minor things that are too highlighted as if they weren't supposed to be as minor. To me, it almost seems like originally there were supposed to be 3 seasons, but somehow then the second and third ones have been compressed into our current season 2. However, I have not found any confirmation of this, it's only my impression, and I will explain later why I have this impression, along with other analysis of many details. I will focus mainly on Act 1 because it seems the most compressed part to me. In fact, it contains a lot, really a lot of interesting topics, but with very little development. It also contains traces of an important main topic that was lost and only hinted at. I will start by the many topics that are presented as important at first, but are later overlooked. One of these are Hextech weapons. During Season 1, we often see discussions about Hextech weapons, be it Silco wanting to build them, or the Council discussing if they are ethical. In Season 2 they become a central topic too, especially in Act 1. Mel keeps rejecting Hextech weapons at the Council, while Ambessa is pushing for them. So there is a lot of tension around this topic, even increased by Jayce's worry about the misuse of Hextech. By the end of episode 1, however, Jayce has completely changed his mind and he has built Hextech weapons and handed them to Caitlyn for her mission in Zaun, with Mel being very concerned when she finds out about this. So this whole tension about Hextech weapons was quickly resolved within one episode after the attack at the memorial. Even more emphasis is given to these weapons by the negotiation of Mel, Caitlyn and the Council about their use relative to their approach to Zaun. Mel can't avoid the Council deciding to plan a full-scale invasion of Zaun, but she manages to prohibit Hextech weapons. At the end of the episode, Caitlyn announces that she is going on a targeted mission to Zaun, calling off the invasion, but she will use the Hextech weapons crafted specifically for her and for her team by Jayce, to assure she will have the upper hand against the enemies during the mission. But then in episode 3, very little is shown of the mission and of the use of Hextech weapons. In the little we see, these weapons seem to be used like regular weapons. We don't see why they are special and why they were so fundamental for the success of the mission. Even during the fight at the end of episode 3, they don't seem to have something special, except for the fact that they glitch and malfunction in sync with the Hexcore glitching. So instead of seeing how powerful they are and understand why Mel feared them so much and Caitlyn wanted them so much for her mission, we only see that they break easily. So I think we miss a part in Act 1 in which the use and effects of Hextech weapons during Caitlyn's mission was more extended and clear. I think that the final battle was supposed to highlight the opposing sides of Caitlyn and Vi with Piltovian Hextech and Sevika and Jinx both powered by the Shimmer from Zaun. This also could have been an ending to Caitlyn's mission thematically as well. If you recall, Caitlyn announces the goals of her mission at the end of episode 1. Locate Jinx, dismantle Shimmer, and eliminate any agent still loyal to Silco. Among her goals there is the dismantling of Shimmer production and distribution, the drug that ruins but also empowers Zaunites. And she judged she needed the Piltovian innovative Hextech to do it. So an open opposition between these two cities, each with their own tool for empowerment and warfare, was to expect. But the Hextech weapons are not the only rushed, overlooked thing in Caitlyn's mission. In fact, of her goals, only the hunt after Jinx is properly shown in episode 3 and hinted at in episode 2 when the enforcers enter her lair and she runs away, but she is stopped by Smeech, who probably informed the enforcers about the location she was at. The other goals are only quickly shown in the music video section. The strike team fights against Zonites, some of them goons of the remaining Chembarons. There are some graphic effects combining Caitlyn's bullets with the fragmented faces of the Chembarons, and we are shown some shots of Shimmer burning. So, these topics were not completely forgotten. The series shows in a few images that Caitlyn pursued these goals too, but it's shown very quickly. We don't really learn how she did it. The series only lets us know that she had those goals and she achieved them. This is disappointing. Concerning Shimmer, we have already seen Jayce and Vi attempting at and failing to destroy its chains of production, so we know it's not an easy task, and it's not obvious if Caitlyn will be able to achieve it, nor how. The disappointment is even greater concerning the Chembarons. In episode 2, we start getting to know them better. The one who sticks out the most is Smeech, because he has a more relevant role in the plot of the episode, linked with Jinx and Sevika. But we see Sevika negotiating with the other Chembarons too, and them arguing among them. I was expecting that, similarly to Smeech, the others were also going to have a bigger role in the next episodes. Instead, they just disappear, and we don't even know what happened to them exactly. Something similar can be argued about the other team, the strike team. The three companions of Vi and Caitlyn are introduced beforehand and given quite an amount of relevance, disproportionately to their inexistent contribution to the plot. And their contribution to the strike team mission is equally unnoticeable. Let's see one by one. The green guy literally does nothing during the whole series. He is just there and behaves like a normal enforcer. He should have been a background character. In the strike team, he seems to run to help one of Jinx's victims, but Maddie does too, probably because they are the only two members with lighter weapons and therefore more agile. In practice, the green guy does not contribute significantly to the plot. As far as we can see, he does not things that Vi and Caitlyn could not have done without him. A similar observation can be done about Loris. I have already dedicated a whole video to understand Loris better, and I have highlighted many details that allow to understand him better, but this does not mean he impacts the plot. On the contrary, mostly he keeps Vi company, but he is not able to really influence her in a unique way. She could behave similarly even without him. During the mission in Zaun, I have shown that he mostly has a protective role and he wields a shield, but again, he is never clearly fundamental or necessary. Caitlyn and Vi could probably carry out the mission without him, maybe with slightly different tactics. Anyway, his defensive role, despite being shown clearly, is never presented as important. It's simply the thing he does, but not a decisive part of Caitlyn's plan. Maddie is the most important among the minor enforcers in the strike team, but that is not a big achievement, and in fact she is still quite irrelevant to the plot. I have already dedicated a video to Maddie as well, in which I analyzed her role mostly as a symbol representing Caitlyn's internal state. But as a role in the plot, she is very minor. She seems to be more relevant because she becomes Caitlyn's lover and later betrays her. However, it is not significant that Maddie, a former companion during the mission in Zaun, did that. Caitlyn could find another random girl, or even several different random girls, and then be betrayed by a random enforcer that we perceived a few times in the background. Even if we assume that Maddie was already spying on Caitlyn for Ambessa during the mission in Zaun, her role is still irrelevant, because she is sent back to Piltover before the real interesting developments of Caitlyn happen, so she probably only reported useless information to Ambessa up to that point. And her contribution as a member of the strike team is as irrelevant as her co-workers. She never does anything fundamental. The redundancy of these three enforcers is confirmed by the fact that Vi and Caitlyn dismissed them before the biggest fight. They don't need them now, and they did not need them before. But here is the point. Since these three enforcers keep appearing and are given relevance, I think that initially they were meant to be useful to the plot. As said, we see very little of Caitlyn's mission in Zaun. I suspect that, if more time was dedicated to the mission, we would have seen more significant contribution by the three enforcers. Instead, their useful interventions were cut, and they were left with the strong characterization but not the equivalent impact on the plot. Another thing that needed more time, in my opinion, was Vi's experience as an enforcer. During the whole episode 1, she fights internally, struggling with her wish of helping Caitlyn stop Jinx, but also with her request of joining the enforcers. We know from the first scene in season 1 that Vi has a heavy trauma related to enforcers, and in case we forgot, she reminds us and Caitlyn in episode 1 season 2. When she shows up in a uniform at the end of season 1, she has quite a worried and regretful, suffering expression on her face. She is not proud of her choice. I expected to see more of her ethical dilemmas, her sense of guilt, her pain while wearing the uniform and fighting against Zonites. Instead, we see nothing of this. We only see her worrying about Caitlyn's growing obsession for Jinx, but nothing more about her personal internal struggles. I feel that this too was a big point missing, since the expectations were prepared since season 1 and then overlooked. Moreover, in Act 1 there is a lot of stuff, especially in episode 3 when the Grey is also added. Since episode 1 we already have the Hextech weapons and the Shimmer as special substances and warfare tools. We are introduced a new group, the Strike Team, and not one goal, catching Jinx, which Caitlyn has tried to do since season 1 and is particularly significant for her seemingly very good friend Vi. But 3 goals are announced, making the schedule of the Strike Team much busier. Then, during episode 2, we see many implications and problems after Silco's death for the organization of life in Zaun, and new hierarchies seem to be arising. We also see Sevika and Jinx unexpectedly getting closer, a new child showing up, and as said we see more of the Chembarons and their goons in a complex net of relations. In episode 3, these two worlds collide. The Strike Team with the new weapons and 3 goals go to the Shimmer Field zone where there are infights for power and Jinx is behaving differently than usual. And to this, the Grey is also added. We have a hint of the Grey in episode 2 already, when Smeech arrives to Margot's headquarters and finds it filled with Grey, but in that case we don't know yet where it comes from and why it is there. Similarly, when the enforcers enter Jinx's lair, they are preceded by the Grey in a very spectacular manner. The gas takes the shape of an anthropomorphic but monstrous and creepy figure, as if it was partially alive and with its own will. Then we understand what Caitlyn is doing with the Grey only at the start of episode 3. But at that point, she already stopped using it, because the only enemy she fights in episode 3 after the music video part is Jinx, and she does not use the Grey for that. But the Grey is still an added element in the same episode in which we see a lot of new other elements. I remember the confusion I and my friend both felt when we watched episode 3 together for the first time. As soon as it ended, we both felt the need to list all the special substances that characters use to fight against each other, each with special qualities. The flying technology of the Firelights, the Hextech, the strange GUI Hexcore, the Shimmer, and now the Grey too. The Black Rose magic, Rictus anti-magic runic stones, Victor's magic, and Jinx explosions, which, because of their color, we were not sure they were made of grey or what. There is a lot, all at once. And in particular, we expected the Grey to be important for the following developments of the story too, since it is presented at the start of episode 3 with a lot of relevance, and since it is characterized so well as almost alive. Instead, no, the Grey is never spoken about again. We only see that enforcers keep wearing masks while in Zaun, for example in episode 4, but we never see highly concentrated Grey again, as if it was never introduced to start with. That is why I think, again, that the mission in Zaun was supposed to occupy a longer duration in order to show more use of Grey 2 and exploit its information and cool characterization better. The Grey was probably one of the elements contributing to a thematic core of Act 1 that in the version we got was washed out. I was able to catch the hint in episode 3, before the start of the fight. Vi asks Jinx what kind of place that is. I have watched a video in which a person asked the same thing, complaining that, contrary to previous important fights, it was not a symbolically important place that could highlight the stakes of the fight. I disagree. Let's listen to Jinx's answer. She says that they currently find themselves in a temple dedicated to the goddess of the winds that was prayed to blow the grey away from the streets and clean the air of Zaun. Jinx says that Vander used to tell to their younger selves some good nice stories about this goddess. So this mythical figure was important for the sisters' childhood and family traditions, but also it is an important element in Zaun's culture and history. Now, if there is a religion celebrating a goddess that cleans the air and makes it breathable, who could be her enemy? The devil should be somebody who pollutes the air and smothers the Zonites in it. Somebody like Caitlyn. And how is the title of the song of the video montage in which Caitlyn's use of the grey against Zaun are illustrated? Hellfire. So I think that it is implied that Caitlyn is like the devil to Zaun, more and more unhinged and polluting their home, disrespecting their whole existence and even their culture. Jinx lures her and Vi in this ancient temple for the final showdown, hoping to make Caitlyn pay for her behavior against Zaun. She puts her and her collaborator Vi in front of the evidence that Zonites used to, and still do, honor a goddess of breathable air, which is a goddess of life and health, while Caitlyn and Vi did exactly the opposite, de facto behaving like demons would do. Jinx positions herself almost as an angel, a protector of Zaun against the demons, an avenger against a dangerous enemy of her people. She openly reminds Vi about the goddess and the clean air Zonites cherish, to put her in front of her bad choices and her betrayal of her origins. But again, I think that this theme could have been more profound and rich if more time was dedicated to Caitlyn's mission and to her worsening approach to Zonites, perhaps also showing how her actions impacted common innocent inhabitants. I think it's a very interesting theme, and I wished to see more about it. So, the final fight of episode 3 concludes a topic letting the two factions of Zonites goddesses and Piltover demons finally face each other directly. It almost feels like the final fight at the end of a season. But it is not the only thing that made me think of Act 1 as a separate season from the other acts, as if a new season started with episode 4. I am not saying that this was the original plan. I am saying that, to me, they feel like episode 3 and episode 4 almost belong to two different seasons. It's true that there is a time skip, so of course some things change between these two episodes, but in this case, there are really a lot of changes. It's common for characters to have the same outfit through a season, sometimes changing the outfit at the first episode of the new season. Vi does this in episode 1 of season 2, where she starts with the same outfit of season 1, but eventually wears the uniform. Caitlyn does the same thing. She starts with a uniform from season 1, and then she switches to a new uniform. They wear this until the end of episode 3. Then, in episode 4, they both have new clothes. Let's look at Sevika. In Act 1, she has the same style as season 1. But then in episode 4, she changes outfit and hairstyle. Isha in episode 4 has a different outfit than in Act 1, coherently with her progressive assimilation to Jinx. Jinx and Victor are the only main characters who do not change. Ambessa has already changed outfit during Act 1 and also in Season 1, despite her recent appearance, so her new changes don't count as actually new. It's difficult to say something about the other characters' outfits, because they disappear at the end of episode 3. So in those cases, the whole character disappears, not only the old outfit. It's an even bigger change. Transporting characters to different places gives them a new context to move in, therefore almost starting a new adventure, or a new phase of their adventure. This is true for Mel, Jayce, Ekko, and Heimerdinger. Most of them will not return to the main plot until episode 8 or later. Not only some characters disappear between episode 3 and 4, but some new ones are introduced into the plot. Singed only appeared in a short flashback epilogues at the end of each episode of Act 1. but never in the main plot. In episode 4, he enters the main plot and immediately starts overturning it by introducing another new entry, Warwick. As said, there are some elements from Act 1 unexpectedly disappearing, such as the grey, but also some new elements appearing out of thin air, such as the melt test by the Black Rose and Jinx being acclaimed as a hero. So these very many changes makes me feel as if Act 1 was a separate season from Act 2 and 3. These are my thoughts about Act 1 of Season 2. About Jinx's colorful explosions that can be linked to the theme of Caitlyn being the devil polluting Zaun's air, I made a video to analyze their meaning. What do you think about my reflections on Act 1? Do you have some other observations to share? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe for more Arcane essays, and see you in the next video. Bye!